when they came along with penicillin, when they came along with aspirin, when they came along with these medicines, digitalis, for heart disease, it came from a simple plant that became earth-changing. And Nerium oleander is the same type product.
Some of our drugs, such as Taxol, comes from the Chinese yew tree, aspirin from the willow tree. Digitalis, that's used for congestive heart failure, comes from the foxglove. And so Nerium oleander is another one of these plants that has some pretty unique properties.
And the oleander plant is known pretty widely for being somewhat dangerous or toxic or whatnot, and the reason for that is because it has cardioglicosides, the same kind of product that's in digitalis.
Various species of Nerium oleander have been used for quite a while as an ornamental bush in Asia, southern United States, and in the Mediterranean region. It really is quite a lovely plant. And interestingly, over the last 1,500 years or more, extracts of this plant have been used for medicinal purposes all the way from its use as a diuretic, cardiovascular disease, and certain skin applications as well.
The plant contains cardiac glycosides, and of course it is a toxic plant, so safety has always been at the forefront as we develop these compounds.
In 1775 in England, Dr. William Withering was treating patients for a syndrome known as dropsy. He was actually using foxglove, which is from a traditional garden, for treatment of his patients. We now know that dropsy is another name for congestive heart failure, and that foxglove contains cardiac glycosides. Very interesting series of compounds also present in Nerium oleander.
Going back in history, like I say, it's been used for a number of years, or 15 centuries, but Dr. Ozel is who I would give credit to for kind of rediscovering this compound. Dr. Ozel was a Turkish doctor. He experimented with several extraction methods, treated patients, published those, and pushed some of the research forward.
Looking back in literature, which really extends back many centuries, it has been used or indicated in various writings for skin care. They would appear for use of abscesses and boils, various other abnormalities in skin tissue, where the Nerium oleander would be applied as a poultice. So again, very, very interesting from a historical perspective. We're now seeing those effects in a scientific manner in a clinical trial. So what is old is new again. Interestingly, around 1998, I began to hear reports of a strange potential, an unusual potential for Nerium oleander and extracts of that plant. Most of this came from stories from an Irish clinician, Dr. Patrick Kelly in Limerick, Ireland, who in his clinic was seeing rather exciting responses in his patients. In 1998, I had a chance to meet with Dr. Kelly and review some of those records, and indeed found a great deal of potential interesting responses in his patients, and the data looked interesting as well.
Well, I'd had an opportunity to see some of the papers, case studies of Dr. Kelly, actually some of the patients that he treated, and that kind of intrigued me. And it looked very, very promising at that point. And of course, coming out of historical use and folklore, what it lacked was the science. And so we had to determine why it worked.
If all you have are anecdotal stories, people instantly doubt you and will take shots at you. If you have the science to back up your anecdotal stories, that becomes a whole different deal.
The research that Dr. Newman's done now in this arena, he's had at least a dozen publications. There's more in the works at this point. Research continues for different properties. The original compound has gone through an FDA phase 1 safety trial. There's a second compound that has gone through the safety trials at MD Anderson, and there's more coming at this point.
Our interest in natural products and towards the latter part of my career at MD Anderson was somewhat controversial. At the time, everybody was interested in targeted therapies and the belief that serious diseases really was due to one specific defect in an enzyme or protein or even a specific molecular pathway. We now realize this was perhaps a naive concept in that most serious diseases, like malignant diseases, are actually due to multiple defects, be they mutations, proteins, enzymes, or multiple pathways. Finding one pharmaceutical drug to effectively treat that is unlikely, possible but unlikely. It seemed to me at the time that a much more effective application would be in extracts of potent natural products. We became interested in Nerium oleander for its reported use, and I think one finding excited us even more than the next in terms of its potential utility application over a wide variety of cancers. And now we're finding, to my surprise, that extracts of Nerium oleander have a wide utility, but in areas of neurodegenerative disease, certainly antiviral activity, and in skin care as well, being effective against numerous skin conditions. So to date, there have been 2 clinical studies that have been conducted with extracts of Nerium oleander, and there are plans for a third. Let me briefly review these for you. The first one was done at Cleveland Clinic, a noted institute famous for its heart care, among other things. The extract was given by an intramuscular route. No toxicities were observed. But in fact, the trial was a little disappointing in that the major limiting toxicity was the amount of volume that they were injecting intramuscularly. That was followed up by our development of a very potent concentrated extract of Nerium oleander that was specifically formulated for oral absorption. That is, we could give it as an oral medication. We decided to conduct this at this country's largest cancer research hospital, which is MD Anderson Cancer Center, a part of the University of Texas. That trial just recently finished. It took over 3 years and involved nearly 40 patients. We were gratified to see, on the one hand, that we had stable disease and some partial responses as well, which is extremely gratifying and unexpected. On the other hand, we saw no evidence of cardiovascular toxicity at all. And we were specifically looking for this injury. So what we ended up with, and just recently reported at the American Society of Clinical Oncology in Chicago, a meeting of clinical oncologists in this country, was what is our belief is an effective treatment that's new and different and can be given safely without serious side effects. The third clinical trial is also to be conducted at the University of Texas MD Anderson Cancer Center. In addition to its potential use as a standalone or single therapy, we're greatly interested in the potential use of Nerium oleander extracts in combination with standard of care chemotherapy, that is, established drugs used for this. We're now preparing through Nerium Biotechnology an application to the FDA to do this trial, which is already funded. This will be done in patients with lung cancer, being treated with standard of care therapies for lung cancer, but to which an extract of Nerium oleander will be added.
At this point, we're very positive about what we're seeing, and of course all the research will be peer-reviewed and published at some point at the appropriate time in the future.
There's well over 1,000 different varieties of the oleander plant. Nerium oleander is one particular species that is grown, as I mentioned, in Asia, southern United States as an ornamental bush, and the Mediterranean. I think it is particularly important that one uses a dedicated field grown in an organic-like manner for this.
My name is Joel Curtis, and this orchard was established over a decade ago as a research orchard. My background primarily is agriculture. My major is entomology. I have a minor in chemistry and horticulture. Now, understand that this is the only type of orchard like this in the world. We are specifically designing equipment that will harvest these. There's no such thing as oleander equipment. You just don't go down to your local implement dealer and say, show me your best oleander equipment. It's not there.
This particular farm where the oleander plant is raised is dedicated to this purpose. It's environmentally friendly, no pesticides are used.
We're primarily after the leaves. And that's the reason why we do not want any irrigation water. We do not want any type of chemicals, nothing on the leaves.
The leaves are harvested, they are milled in a specific manner, dried, and then ground to a fine powder. We think this is important from a quality control point of view, but we were also concerned with lot-to-lot analyses and variability.
So it is a very specialized approach. It's extremely laborious and very, very expensive to grow this crop.
The investment that we've made in this farm, in our people, in our manufacturing, and the research, all adds to that quality, and we're very, very sensitive to quality controls. I mean, this compound is just not something you're going out there and taking some plant, making an extract. It's not that simple.
Well, it's taken us 10 years to get where we are, and the improvements come slowly and gradually, and only with a whole lot of attention and concentration and the right people doing it. Somebody coming in and becoming a competitor to us isn't something that I even think about. It's just too far down the road.
Well, they're not going to knock it off because they've got they're 10 years behind. I mean, they're going to have to go out and start doing, all the research themselves. A lot of the stuff involved here is already been patented. And there's stuff if the stuff that hadn't been patented, there's patents pending.
So again, for someone to try to reproduce this, I think would be extraordinarily difficult.
It's not that easy to get involved in this industry. It's very complex. There's a lot of science that goes into it. Science not only starting at the field itself, but all the way through the processing as well as to the end user. So it's an extremely complex, dynamic approach.
It's just a long, slow process. The biotech business doesn't just happen overnight. It takes a lot of work and a lot of money.